It's time to dye. Sherpa! I need to dye some Sherpa fabric for my Appa plushies. They look like this. And this brown color is so hard to find. So if you're having trouble finding brown Sherpa, check out this video. I'm gonna do the best I can to get this brown, or I'll even take this color brown if I can. What I'm using in this video is a yard of Sherpa fabric. If your Sherpa fabric is folded over, I did cut it down the fold so that I only have one piece of the yard, not doubled. I did this for me personally so that it's easier to dye and work with. I don't have a big area. And in this video, I'm not gonna be dyeing in a washing machine at all because they say for synthetic fabrics or like polyester, that kind of stuff, which this is, it's 100% polyester. They say the best way to do it is on a stove top with boiling water, which you'll find out I also don't do that, but I do try to keep it as boiling as possible. And then I'm going to be trying out this RIT dye more with the synthetic, specifically for synthetic fabrics, and also this RIT dark brown all-purpose dye. And I'm gonna see, this one's chocolate brown, this one's dark brown. I would love to have more dark brown, but it does say on the back to use double if you're dyeing synthetic, and it says it for both of them, which is weird. Even though this is specifically for synthetic, it still says use double the amount. So I don't really understand that, but as you'll see, I did a couple of different test runs to see what works best for the color that I want, and then if you see a color that you want, you can follow the one that you like the best.
So after I cut my fabric, I weighed them to see what it's coming out to be for that yardage. And I was getting around 7 ounces, which is a little less than 8 ounces. But I went ahead and just went with it because you'll see in my math, it recommends 1 pound for half the bottle and 3 gallons of water. So I decided to just half all of that and do 8 ounces of fabric, a quarter of the bottle, and then 1.5 gallons, which was 24 cups. And then I just wrote down for polyester double the quantity, but I wanted to try not doing that for the first one. So I got my 24 cups of water ready. I didn't have a big enough pot to do 24 in one pot. If I did, I would probably just be dyeing it in that one big pot. So if you can get a big like turkey pot and use that specifically for dyeing, that would work the best. So I filled this one up, and then I also filled up another smaller little pot to get the 24 cups. And I wanted to do a video where I was talking through this while I was doing it, but I had to sit on the phone for like 4 hours. Like this whole process, I was on the phone with my insurance company trying to change my last name and tell them that I was married. So I was like, well, what better way to spend time on hold than to also dye fabric while I'm doing it. So if you see my phone and my AirPod in, I'm unfortunately not listening to an audiobook like I would have rather been. I was on hold. So I put lids on those pots so they will boil faster, turn the heat up to high, and then got my yard of fabric ready. And I used this cheap trash can that I got from Dollar General, and I'm going to use that to dye it in. I of course could dye it in my sink, which could have also maybe been easier and retained the heat better, but I was just concerned. I wanted to keep it in one place. And you just want to make sure that your fabric can move easily in whatever pot you're using so that you can stir it constantly. And make sure that you always pre-wet your fabric. So you want to make sure you get everything wet so that it has a nice even dye. If you have any dry spots, that is going to dye differently than if it was all one consistent texture or like moisture level. They recommend pre-washing your fabric when you're dyeing things, But I was afraid to wash my Sherpa, honestly, because I'd never washed it before. I'd never dried it before. So I just wanted to see what it would be like if I just cut it right off the bolt. Next experiments that I do, I will probably pre-wash it because it did wash fine and it did dry fine. But then in that scenario, I can just pre-wash it and it'll already be all consistently the same moisture level. And then I can go straight into dyeing it. I recommend getting some tongs that you're only going to use for dyeing and get some gloves so that you don't stain your hands. I also got a little container to measure out my dye. If you, of course, are going to use the whole bottle, you don't have to worry about that. And then this is just showing my math of how I split up my dye. So I'm starting with this synthetic dye first, and I'm going to measure it out and do a quarter of the bottle. So I did 1.75 ounces into my little cup, and then just make sure that you are tearing the weight so that you're not getting the ounces of the cup by itself mixed up with your ounces of liquid. By this point, my water was almost boiling, and I was really curious if my meat thermometer would tell me the temperature of the water too, and it did. They recommend keeping it at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, so right before boiling, but I ended up, after testing this, just to get it to boiling. And then because I'm transferring it to a different pot, I was like, if it's a little bit hotter, it's gonna cool down throughout the experiment anyways. So I just boiled it. That way I didn't have to check temperatures all the time. And it also recommends adding a little bit of dish soap to even out the dye. And then I added my dye, and I added a little bit more water in the cup just to get any extra dye, because I knew, I'd rather want it dark than light, so just any extra dye I can get. Then we're just going to stir all that together. That way the dye is all consistent in there, and we're going to add our fabric in there nice and carefully so you don't splash it all over your kitchen. And definitely use the tongs at this part because it's going to be very hot. Here's what it looked like right after I put it in. You can see it kind of has a purpley tint. I talk about this a lot, but I do understand, like, purples and blues, that's what you put in here to get it dark. So it's gonna have a little purple to it. But this one sat in there for 30 minutes. So I started a timer, and then I also do some little check-ins, but you do wanna stir it constantly if you can. So here is like after 10 minutes. And then here's after like 20 minutes. And then since I knew I was going to be doing another batch of dyeing, I started boiling my water again. So here's the full 30 minutes and what it's looking like. And they do recommend using warm or hot water and then slowly rinsing it with colder water. Remember, this material is very hot because it's been in boiling water. And I mean, if you have gloves that protect, the heat of your hands, like not just latex gloves, those would probably be really nice too, like nice dish gloves. Because it was very hot, and I did actually have to use colder water to kind of cool it down so that I could actually wring it out. And they recommend wringing out the water until it runs clear. And what I found best is doing like a kneading movement, like you're kneading dough, and that worked best while also like getting some clear water in there. What I didn't realize though until Joey pointed it out when he was watching me is that when I do the kneading, the whole sink like caves in and you can see the like faucet moving. And what I'm doing right here is cutting a little swatch of fabric so that I can just see what it looks like before it goes in the wash and compare it, and then also to be able to differentiate between these two different tests just in case they come out almost similar. So I just wrote down my plan for this next one, which is 3.5 ounces or half of the bottle, because I knew that I wanted it darker. and this is still the synthetic dye.
Oh no. I didn't pre-wet my fabric.
So yeah, make sure you pre-wet your fabric so you're ready to go. And this is me just refilling everything and doing pretty much the same thing with the 3.5 ounces of the dye instead. It's the same amount of water, same amount of dish detergent, and then more dye. And again, don't be a dummy like me and use gloves or tongs, because I stuck my hand in boiling water and dye and had to rinse it off really fast. And we're gonna do that for an hour.
Ow!
Are you okay?
I hit the lamp now. Oh my gosh, it's on the ceiling, love.
How did you get it on the ceiling?
Don't worry about it.
What?
Just doing like some light
Do you
dusting.
need me to keep stirring this?
No.
This definitely looks better.
Yeah. Look at the curtains.
Oh my god. Well,
It's okay. We didn't like them. But I'm just gonna stop doing that because
doing what?
I keep pulling it out with the tongs, but the tongs like are not good tongs, you know? So they just slips through and then it splatters everywhere. And I'm wondering if it's this color dye too. This one is chocolate brown. The other one is dark brown. So hopefully that'll be
I feel like
dark.
chocolate brown would be lighter than dark brown, but
Yeah.
I mean,
But the top chocolate brown is the synthetic dye, which is supposedly supposed to be better for this. So this is double the amount of that.
it's only just a little bit lighter than the one you use now.
It's purple, which I understand that's what you have to use. Some more water boiling probably will help. Let's see. Yeah, it's been about 30 minutes.
The mix?
For that one, yeah.
Oh, that. You want that?
I also recommend getting some kind of little scale if you want to be really accurate. And then I got like a little cup to put the dye in so that I can measure it out. And then just make sure that you tare to, you know, allow the weight of the cup on here to not be part of the ounces. You can also just wing it if you want. And just, if it says a quarter of the bottle, just guesstimate the quarter of the bottle.
And if you guys thought I made a big mess before, just wait until you see this.
No!
That doesn't sound good. Did you just mix the dyes?
No, I just splattered it. The first one went so well.
And while my water is boiling for my third experiment, I started getting the dye ready for it as well. And I did 3.5 ounces of the non-synthetic dye. So this is just the all-purpose dark brown dye. And as you can see that it looks like it was already dyeing a lot darker. Because it wasn't the synthetic dye, it didn't stick as well to it. And then I'm just doing another swatch of this one to see what it looks like before the wash and after the wash. And I just put those in the wash, the first test and the second test together. And I did just a quick cycle. And I also threw in a few old towels as well.
All right, so here's the final batch I'm gonna do for today at least. This is the dark brown double for this amount of fabric. So I did 3.5 ounces, so half the bottle. And it is already starting to be darker and it doesn't have as much of that purple tint like the other one does. But The other two just got done in the wash, so let's go see what that's looking like. Oh, also here's my swatches. I don't even know if you can tell on camera, but this is the first one, and it's a little bit lighter than this one. This is the second one, but not by much. Like, honestly, now that this one's dried more, they look about the same. All right, and I didn't have any detergent, like I just had the Tide Pod things, so I didn't put any detergent in here. Let's look. Oh, the other one's stuck up there. I was like, where is it? Okay, so already these aren't looking as purple tinted, so that's nice. They do look a little bit more light brown color. It's definitely not dark enough for Appa. And you can see that this is lighter than this one. And I mean, I can double check. Yeah. So I cut a square out of the first one, and there's the square corner. And then the other one I just cut the edge off of. So it'll just have like a flat edge. Yep. There it is. All right, so now we're gonna throw these in the dryer. The thing though is I haven't really dried Sherpa before, and you know, we don't want to lose the softness. So we are gonna put this on low, and they're already pretty dry. So we'll just do 30 minutes, and I am gonna make the temp like extra low just to be safe. And I can also, I'll check afterwards and see if the fabric like drew up at all.
So this is the dark brown non-synthetic dye, and as you can see, as soon as it hits that water, it like loses all the dark brown color, which is very sad. But I kind of figured that using a non-synthetic, even if I doubled my dye usage, it wasn't enough.
Look at this. It like took all, like it didn't stay. I'm gonna see though if they make dark brown in that synthetic dye, because synthetic is definitely the way. So here's the colors that we got. Got a little natural light going in here to kind of help, but we are getting like almost a little pinkish looking, because this one definitely felt really purpley, this dye. But I understand like purple's a big one when you're trying to get like black or darker colors. So I don't know if you can tell a little bit that the one on the right is a little darker. And then here is what they looked like before they went through the wash. So it did stay about the same. This one is still pretty wet, so it is a little darker, but pretty much stayed about the same. This is the color that we were wanting for our Appas. You can see that dark brown, or even like that lighter brown color, and none of them are that close. So I think what I've realized is definitely use the synthetic dye, because this is the synthetic dye. The non-synthetic dye is going in the wash right now, but you could kind of already see that it washed everything away that it was dyeing. I'm gonna try to see if I can do another test, but I don't know how much of the synthetic dye I have left. But I would love to do like the whole bottle on this size piece. Or what I could do is just do a smaller section and do whatever I have left and do like the ratio for that, and just do a small little batch test to see if even if I do more dye, will it make a difference. All right, so it's the end of the day, and this is what we've got. As you can see, this one actually came out pretty good. So this is the first attempt that I did. That was a quarter of the bottle, and again, this was for a yard of fabric cut on the fold. So a yard of fabric not doubled over. and it came up this shade. It was 30 minutes. This one was the same material cut except for an hour and double the dye. So this was a quarter of the bottle. This was half the bottle. So then I decided to try out this one, which is the all-purpose dye in the dark brown. And as you could see, it came out super dark when I was dyeing it, but all of it washed away. And now we have this nice little peachy color. In the video, it kind of looks like more cream, but it is more pink in real life.
Yeah, you could just pick this up and show them, but this is different too.
Yeah.
This is still wet.
Yeah, it might dye a little darker, but yeah, this was the little swatch that I did. And then this was the final one I did. I did use the rest of the synthetic dye to try to get this color. And the way that I got this was I did smaller amount of fabric. So this was actually 4 ounces of fabric when these were 8 ounces. So a little bit less than 4 ounces. And I did the ratio to where it would make this be half the bottle. But I didn't have half the bottle left. I only had
Quarter.
a quarter of the bottle left. And so I made that work, and then I left it for 60 seconds. I left it for 60 minutes, and that's the color we got. And these have all been washed and dried. So I think what I would do next would be get another bottle of the synthetic dye and try to dye maybe not quite a yard, but a little bit less. Leave it in there for an hour, or attempt to dye this one again. But I do want to know what it would be like to start from white baseline. And I think the best would be probably a whole bottle, but less fabric dyed, or same amount like the yard cut, or 2 bottles or a bottle and a half. So hopefully I will experiment with that more, and I'll update you guys in the description when I try new things. And I hope that this helped dyeing Sherpa. And that's all I have for the video right now. Again, check the description. I will add to it if I find anything out that worked well for me. And keep in mind, I did not pre-wash my fabric. I did dry it to make sure that that fabric stays and it's not gonna wash out. If you're concerned, you could put it through another wash, but it's not necessary. And if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and I'll try to get to you. If there's anything else you think I should try differently to get a darker color, let me know that as well. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye-bye!